Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's start biology. Chapter number 5. Okay. Biology is defined as the scientific study of organisms, which is living things. Okay? So biology is the study of the organisms or the study of living things. Of course, this will include origin, the location, where does this microorganism came? Diversity, is it diverse or is it like a single species? Structure, how is the structure of this microorganism? How does it look like? Activities, how active is this microorganism? And at the end, distribution. Where is this microorganism is distributed? Some microorganisms will like petroleum hydrocarbons. Some of them will like saline soil, saline water. Depending on the distribution, you will understand this is the type of microorganism. In biology, we include the study of biotic effect. So the biotic effect is the way that the organisms have an effect on the environment. Okay? And also affected by the environment. So the effect on the environment and being affected by the environment is the biotic effect of the microorganism. Of course, the effect on humans, impact on the environment, impact by the humans, mediations of environmental transformation, and the most important thing that environmental engineers do every day is the utilization of the microorganisms in the treatment of contaminated soil, air, and water. So if you have, let's say if you have a lake and this lake is contaminated, let's say with the E. coli, you could like spill bacteria, and this bacteria, we call it E. coli degraders. They love E. coli. So this bacteria will get rid of this E. coli. Sometimes if you have organic, if you spill that bacteria in this lake to eat hydrocarbons, to eat benzene, anything that is related to the food that this bacteria or this microorganisms degrade. So the utilization of the microorganisms in the treatment of contaminated air, water, and soil is highly used by environmental engineers. Some important terminology that if you read a biology book is they call the atmosphere air. They call water hydrosphere. Soil is lithosphere. Abiotic, non-living, which include atmosphere, hydrosphere, and lithosphere. Biosphere contains all the living things on Earth. Ecosystem, which is, we use this a lot, it's the interactions of the biosphere with the abiotic component. Now, we know what is biosphere. Okay? Which contain all the living things on Earth. What is abiotic? Component. It's non-living, the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, and the lithosphere. We know what is atmosphere, what is the hydrosphere, and what is lithosphere. Ecosystem can be a natural, either lake, grassland, forest, and desert, and can be engineered, biological wastewater treatment plant, for example. So it's either we create, like engineered, or something happened by the nature. Ecosphere includes all the ecosystem of the world. And at the end, ecology is the study of structure and function of the ecosphere and its ecosystem interactions between living things and their abiotic environment. At the end, taxonomy is the classification of the organisms. Okay. So biologists classify the organisms into 3 domains. Okay? The archaea, the bacteria, and the eukaryote. Of course, these domains can be subdivided into kingdom, phyla, classes, orders, familias, genera, and species. At the end, species, at the bottom, this is the tree. This is the tree of the subdivisions of all the domains. At the end, species, which is like a group of individuals that possess a common DNA. Okay? Let's look at this prokaryotes, the archaea, and the bacteria. Of course, their cellular content, such as pigment and nuclear materials, are not segregated within a cellular structure. You can see this, for example, a small bacteria. You can see the pili. Okay, this is on their skin. You can see the plasmid. You can see the capsules. This is the capsule. Okay. You can see the cell wall, the yellow one here, and you can see the plasma membrane after the cell wall, and you can see the DNA. This is the DNA of that bacteria. You can see the ribosome, these dots, red dots, and you can see the cytoplasm, this green stuff that's carrying up the ribosomes, and you can see the tail. We call it flagellate. Okay, that will push the bacteria moving around. The eukaryotes consist of organisms with segregated or organization with a compartment. There is a compartment on top of it. They possess nucleus and organelles, such as chloroplast. Okay, remember we have prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Prokaryotes is not segregated within the cellular structures, the nuclear material and the pigments. While the eukaryotes, it's with organisms with segregated or compartment organization. The eukaryotes, the domain eukaryotes can be divided into 4 kingdoms: Protista, fungi, plant, for example, and animalia, animals. Now, we did study each one of the types of microorganisms that you might see in water, air, or soil. Now, remember, every microorganism has a different feeding strategy. They eat differently. So these strategies differ among the various kingdoms and domains. The first feeding strategy, absorption, which is the uptake of the dissolved nutrients. An example, fungi. So the fungi will do absorption, to absorb the organic into the system, which is the uptake of dissolved. It has to be dissolved in order to be absorbed. It cannot be particulate. Okay? Photosynthesis is a different feeding strategy, which is the fixation of light, energy, into a simple organic molecules. Example, plants. So plant does not absorb. Plant use photosynthesis to feed by fixing the light energy into a simple organic molecules. Ingestion, like us, we swallow, which is the intake of particulate nutrients. Example, animals, and we are one of these organisms who eat using ingestion. There is an importance of microorganisms in environmental engineering. There is, of course, a variety of them that are present in natural systems, present in lakes, rivers, wetlands, soil, and etc. And there is a huge application of microorganisms in engineered systems. For example, of course, the most important one is wastewater treatment plants, and of course, groundwater bioremediation. Treating the wastewater coming from industrials, from municipal, and also if you have a groundwater and this groundwater has huge organic pollutants, we do groundwater bioremediation, cleaning up the groundwater from organics. There's major organisms groups I'll give you a video in the next video of this chapter. You can see that the viruses, and of course these are the type of viruses that might come and might affect people. Bacteria, of course, you could see it either cocci, like this, cocci, like circles together, or spiral, it's like spiral like this, or bacilla like this, okay? And then, of course, there is another organisms like a rotifier, okay? You can see that they have tails here, and their mouth as at the top, so they feed from their mouth. And of course, there is another types of rotifiers, but this is the most important rotifiers in wastewater, and we'll be seeing this. Of course, bacteria, we'll see it a lot. We'll see cocci, spirals, and bacillus. Fungi, also we see a lot in water and soil and also air. Cryptococcus, and this is a famous one in environmental engineering. Algae is also, we see a lot. Of course, you will see a lot of microorganisms, protozoa, and then, of course, fish is the hugest microorganism that you might see. Okay, so we will be talking about this and the most important thing that you might see in environmental engineering in the next video, but after we finish this section first. The World Health Organization, this is an association that report diseases, report microbial endangering humans and of course animals and life and earth. They report that diarrhea causes 4% of all deaths worldwide. 4% of the human population die because of only diarrhea, killing 2.2 million people every year, mostly of course children in developing countries. What is this diarrhea? Diarrhea is a symptom of infection caused by viruses, bacteria, and macroinvertebrates, and protozoa. And of course, what is the only spread? By water. If you drink water with viruses, bacteria, and protozoa, this can cause diarrhea. And when you have diarrhea, remember that 4% of all death in the worldwide can caused by only diarrhea. So I could give you an example that of microorganisms that can cause diarrhea, like viruses, Mumps virus, tobacco virus, and polio virus, and bacteria, of course, the same type we talked about, cocci, spirilla, and bacilla, and protozoa, of course, and of course the most important one is verticilla and the rest, amoeba and the rest. Okay, so this is one example of a disease that might kill 4% of the humans. There's a lot of water-related diseases also that can include those diseases derived from exposure to microorganisms too, or chemicals that are found in water that we drink. Of course, there's other water-related diseases that include those that have part of their life cycle. This is the life cycle of the microorganisms. Diseases like malaria that have water-related vectors due to sometimes to improper management of stormwater and solid waste, and other diseases such as legionellosis that is carried by aerosols, like coronavirus, carried by aerosols that contain disease-causing organisms. Of course, legionellosis is a collection of infections that emerged on the second half of the 20th century and that are caused by Legionella and related to bacteria itself, and this is part of a bacterial group. Hepatitis A, hepatitis E viruses are transmitted via the fecal route, most often through a contaminated water from a person to a person. And hepatitis A and E are from the virus group. We just showed you the virus group in a few slides before. Typhoid and paratyphoid fevers are caused by the bacteria Salmonella typhi, and thus Salmonella and typhi and Salmonella paratyphi are part of the bacterial group. Okay, cholera is caused by the bacterium Fibro-cholerae, and this is part of the bacterial group too. Okay, so cholera is one disease that, and at the end, Ascaris is the infection of the small intestine, which is caused by Ascaris lumbricoides, which is a large round worm, and this is part of the macro invertebrate group. Okay. Application of microorganisms in the engineering system is by doing, like an example of this engineering system that they are doing in one of these countries, a large-scale photobioreactor to grow microalgae. They use microalgae to treat the water. Okay, so they could put starch and lipid to make sure that they are growing microalgae. Okay, so we have to end up this slides with the next few slides before we start video number 2 for chapter number 5. How could we see the population size? Because bacteria and microorganisms grow millions in few seconds. So their growth, we will study it now. And we have units for this population growth or population size. First, what we use for population size is dry weight. So by measuring the dry weight, we call it gram dry weight. It's another way of measuring population size. Also, organic carbon content, gram carbon, is also another way of measuring the population size. Chlorophyll content is one way of measuring population size. So any one of these are commonly used to measure population size of microorganisms. We study population size. We also study population dynamics, okay? Which is what is the rule of this microorganisms? What is the rule of this microorganisms on while discharged to surface water? Okay. What is the efficiency of these microorganisms in biological treatment? So the rule, the efficiency, and also substrate, this is food, and organisms interactions and the cleanup of contaminated soils. At the end, control of mucinous algae growth in lakes. So the population dynamics and the population size are also has to be done together. Okay? Last one, before we stop and start the next video, is once we are studying the population dynamics, we have to know if there is, of course, any models. We are engineers, we have to model this dynamics of the microorganisms. So, to model this population growth and to model the mass balance that we should be applying for this population dynamics, we have to use certain models. Also, these models, these population dynamics models can be used to study the population growth of algae and bacterial community. Let's take the simplest models of population growth. Okay, let's look at the population dynamic. If we perform a mass balance on the biomass resulting in the following equation, of course, dm over dt, change of mass or the mass balance with time, is mass rate input minus mass rate output plus any reaction. This is the mass balance of the biomass. Okay, this is similar to v dx over dt. So if you do this, it's volume dx by mass growth with time, qxn. Now flow rate, biomass concentration n, minus flow rate, biomass concentration out, plus or minus if there is reaction, either addition or subtraction. Of course, x is the biomass concentration milligram per liter, and T is times in day, V is volume in liter, and Q is flow rate in liter per day, and X, as we mentioned before, is milligram per liter. This is in addition to that. Now, since we are doing models of populations, we have to consider a batch reactor. So assuming a batch reactor, that this model is being used in a batch reactor, and assuming a first order reaction. Remember the batch reactor? It's a small tank. You fill it in until it gets to a max. You stop filling. You do a reaction. Of course, you need a mixer and you need air for the microorganisms. At the end of reaction, you stop mixing and you stop aeration, and then you do decanting, or taking the water after cleaning off. This is a batch reactor. It's not continuously feeding in and continuously feeding out. No. That is CMFR or CSTR, or a plug flow reactor. So in a batch reactor, remember, there is nothing in, there is nothing out while there is reaction. So V dx over dt is equal dvx over dt plus or minus reaction. And of course, if you are doing first order, dx over dt is equal kx. Of course, the volume is cancelled with the volume because the volume is constant. So dx over dt is equal kx. K here is first order. We are assuming it's first order, not zero order. Okay, so that is the batch reactor. We want to remember this once we come to the next models. So now we will start this this section of chapter number 5 in the next video, because as models are related, we have 3 models to explain: the biomass growth, unlimited model, exponential growth, space limited model, logistic growth, resources limited model, monod growth. So we'll be talking about this in the next video.